Hello guys, welcome to One I Am. So let's begin with another episode of Financial Grade API Security with WSO2 Identity Server 7 release. So if you have watched our previous videos, we have covered many important building blocks for financial grade API security. So things like PAR request, request object, private key JWT, and mutual TLS. So today we are going to cover integrity protection of authorization response coming out of identity provider, because one of the main goals of financial grade API security is integrity protection in each communication. So I took this diagram from the WSO2 documentation under financial grade API security, and we have seen this diagram in our previous videos as well. So we saw when in our request object video how we can enforce our authorization request in this step 1, make into the authorization server. So today we're going to look at how we can protect our authorization response using JARM. So this is the step 2, and we can do this using hybrid method as well. So we will bring a separate video on how to utilize hybrid method. So today we're going to focus on JARM to protect our authorization response. So let's take a look at the specification for FAPI. So in this specification, so it says JARM allows a client to request that an authorization server encodes the authorization response in a JWT. So basically, JARM uses a JSON web token to encode our authorization response, and this is how it protects the authorization response. Also, another important thing to note in this specification is, so when we are using OpenID Connect authentication responses, we would need to use in our OpenID request parameters, we need to use response type as code in order to use response mode JWT. So when you put the response mode JWT, you are making a JARM request to the authorization server. Alright, so now let's look at some of the security considerations that they have looked into when implementing JARM. So this is the same specification. So under section 8, they have mentioned the security considerations. So basically JARM eliminates multiple phishing attacks. So things like access token phishing and authorization code phishing at token endpoint. Also, so JARM eliminates identity provider mix-up attacks as well. So when a scenario like this, right? So when your client has, let's say, multiple IDP setup, and one of your IDP is a rogue IDP that uses the same client ID. So in this kind of a scenario, your client would get a mix up, right? So whether this is the correct IDP or the rogue IDP. So basically JARM eliminates these kind of attacks, because in a JARM response, the issuer is included in the response of the JSON web token. So using the issuer, we can eliminate these kind of mix-up attacks. So this is very high level, so we can even bring a separate video on how this identity provider mix-up attack happen as well. Alright, so if you go to this OpenID group's homepage, under final specifications, under FAPI group working specifications, so this is the spec that we discussed about security vulnerabilities and how JARM is implemented. And we can also see a separate spec which is there for JARM itself. So this shows how important JARM is when it comes to financial grade API security. So now let's get on with the demo. Okay, so I have logged into the identity server console. Let's create a standard based application. I'm gonna name this JARM demo and I'm gonna hit create. Since when we are using JARM request, we need to allow code grant type, since we are going to put the response type as code, and I'm going to put the redirect URL here as well. So let's put localhost 3000 as our redirect URL, and I'm going to hit update. Alright, so we are all set. Let's copy this client ID and let's make our authorization request. So let me remove this. And so let's put the client ID, the one we copied. So let me paste it. An important thing to note here is that so we are using the response type as code and our response mode is going to be JWT. So this is what makes this a JARM request, and so when the authorization server gets back to us with the response, it will be a JSON web token. So let's try it out. So we need to log in, and yeah. So yeah, we are redirected to our application, and as for the response, we have received a JSON web token. So let's copy this URL and get the token out of it. So let's copy this token and decode it. I'm going to use jwt.io website to decode this JSON web token. So let's paste our JSON web token. So this is our decoded data, right? So we have received our access, the authorization code, and we have received the issuer here as well. So if you remember the security considerations, so the IDP mix-up attacks, so we can mitigate this using this issuer. Also, we have received the expiry and the session state as well. So now let's use this authorization code to get the access token also, right? So let's try it out. So I'm in the Postman, and for the code I'm going to put the authorization code here, and I have already set up the other parameters, and in the authorization section I'm using the client ID and the client secret. Now let's do this request. Okay, so we have received our response and we have received our access token as well. So now we have got the full picture, right? So we have seen JARM in next action and how we can leverage JARM to protect our authorization response coming from the authorization server. So if you guys have any questions, please leave a comment in the comment section, and thank you for watching the video.